Hello. With the general election happening on Thursday, DC employment solicitors have produced a report to summarise the key policy statements and pledges relating to employment law that have been made by the main national political parties in their respective manifestos. In today's episode, we'll be looking at the Conservative Party's manifesto promises. Tomorrow, we'll be broadcasting a video which takes a look at what the Labour Party has to say. And on early Thursday morning, we'll give you a summary of the pledges from the Lib Dems, UKIP and the Green Party. Our aim is to give a very quick overview of what the parties are actually saying, along with an analysis of the potential challenges that they might face in implementing some of the policies if they get into power. I hope that you enjoy these short video summaries of our report, which we've rather grandly decided to call a critical review of the alternative policies. I don't think we thought the acronym through properly. Anyway, let's have a look at what the Conservative Party has to say. The Conservative Party's main aim, as referred to in its manifesto, is to achieve full employment in Britain by backing British businesses, cutting red tape, lowering taxes on jobs and enterprise, getting young people into work and boosting apprenticeships. It's true to say that as far as employment law is concerned, the current government has made a number of significant changes during its period in office, and the pace is unlikely to slow down if the Conservatives win a majority on Thursday. So, what are their main policy pledges? Firstly, the Conservative Party has said that it wants to support ongoing increases to the national minimum wage in the next Parliament. They plan to do this by accepting the recommendations of the Low Pay Commission to increase the national minimum wage from £6.50 at the moment to £6.70 this autumn, with the goal of an ongoing increase to over £8 an hour by the end of the decade. Secondly, they'll increase the tax-free personal allowance to £12,500. So by the end of 2020, people who work for 30 hours a week on the increased national minimum wage will no longer pay any income tax at all. The Conservative Party has also pledged to pass a new law in the first budget after the general election so that the personal allowance automatically rises in line with the national minimum wage. And finally, the Conservatives have said that they'll take tougher action on employers who don't pay the national minimum wage by allowing inspection teams to reinvest more of the money raised by fines levied on employers. The Conservative Party has also confirmed that it supports the living wage and will encourage businesses to pay it if they can afford it. Rather embarrassingly, during a Radio 1 interview on the 22nd of April, David Cameron wasn't able to remember what the living wage was, saying, "It's different in different parts of the country, I don't have the figures in my head." Well, at the moment it's currently £9.15 an hour in London and £7.85 an hour in the rest of the country. The Conservative Party's manifesto states that it will eradicate exclusivity in 0 hours contracts. You'll probably have found it hard to miss the huge amount of media coverage about 0 hours contracts and their apparent abuse by some employers, both during the election campaign itself and beforehand. For those of you who might be unclear about what 0 hours contracts are, although there's no strict legal definition, they're generally considered to be contracts that allow employers to employ workers with no guarantee of work, so that they work only when they're needed and their pay depends on how many hours they work. The Conservative Party has focused its attention on banning exclusivity clauses in 0 hours contracts. Exclusivity clauses are seen as an attempt to prevent workers from working for another employer. If exclusivity clauses were banned, this would mean that a 0 hours worker could work for another employer if they wanted to, and the original employer couldn't prevent this from happening. As far as trade unions and industrial action is concerned, the Conservative Party manifesto states that it will introduce a number of reforms. Firstly, they'll implement a tougher threshold for strike action in the health, transport, fire and education sectors, which would require a minimum turnout of 40% of all those entitled to take part in strike ballots, in addition to a majority vote by all those who actually turn out to vote. The Conservatives will also try to ensure that strike action can't be called on the basis of ballots conducted years before. The Conservatives had previously talked about a 3-month time limit, but they didn't mention a particular time frame in the manifesto. The Conservatives will also repeal the ban on employers from using agency workers to cover striking employees. They'll also try to tackle the intimidation of non-striking workers, introduce legislation to ensure a transparent opt-in for union subscriptions by trade unions, and also tighten the rules around facility time or paid time off for union representatives. The proposals to tackle what the Conservative Party calls disruptive and undemocratic strike action is arguably controversial, given that the rules surrounding industrial action are already quite complicated, highly regulated and often heavily litigated. The unions are likely to put a strong challenge to these proposals should the Conservatives gain power. Another Conservative Party headline grabber was David Cameron's announcement that they'll make volunteering for 3 days a year a workplace entitlement for people working in large companies. This would affect employers with at least 250 employees and public sector employers. It's estimated that this new right would be available to 15 million employees and would create up to an extra 360 million volunteering hours every year. Next, the Conservatives have pledged to create an extra 3 million apprenticeships over the next 5 years if they win the election. On the 9th of April, David Cameron announced 16,000 new apprenticeships over the next 5 years as part of a deal agreed with some leading employers. On the issue of equality, the Conservative Party manifesto says that the jobless rate for disabled people is too high, despite 140,000 disabled people finding work last year. As such, the Conservatives will aim to halve the disability employment gap by transforming policy, practice and public attitudes, although the manifesto itself doesn't provide any detail about how they'll do this in practice. The Conservatives also want to see full, genuine gender equality and will aim to promote this equality by requiring companies with more than 250 employees to publish the difference between the average pay of their male and female employees. The Conservatives have pledged to help people with long-term yet treatable conditions such as obesity or drug or alcohol addictions back into work by ensuring they receive the right medical treatment. The manifesto goes on to say that if they refuse a recommended treatment, their benefits may be reduced. The Conservatives will also provide significant new support to people with mental health problems who claim out-of-work benefits or are being supported by the Fit for Work scheme. And finally, as far as the public sector is concerned, the Conservative Party has pledged to end taxpayer-funded six-figure payoffs for the best paid public sector workers. Although the manifesto doesn't go into any further detail, the Conservatives have previously said that it will introduce new legislation to cap public sector enhanced redundancy payments to £95,000. If the Conservatives win the election, they're also expected to introduce a new law which will require the repayment of public sector exit payments in certain circumstances. For example, where a former public sector employee is re-employed in the public sector within a year of having left their old job. Well, there you have it, the Conservatives' manifesto promises affecting employment law in a nutshell. If you want to see what the Labour Party's pledges are, please tune in tomorrow. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the first instalment of our manifesto report. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more updates, click here. If you want to follow us on our fantastic Twitter page, which gives you a daily heads up about everything employment law related, click here. Or if you want any more information or help, please go to our website by clicking here. And again, all of the links are also below. Once again, thanks for watching and see you next time.